In our latest episode of Apes on Knowledge, I decided to tackle my first chat app using semantic search and retrieval augmented generation. What you see before you is the output of that. I was very curious about the One Big Beautiful Bill, also known as House Resolution 1, that is currently being debated, or at least the variant of it, in the Senate. There were a lot of folks who had indicated that they did not know things that were in HR1 when they had actually approved it, or rather voted in favor of it. For example, Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't realize it had this one. So I'll give you an example here. What does the bill say about AI regulation? Go ahead and move that. It takes a couple seconds to load, much faster than my first implementation, and we'll tackle those details later. So there's this 10-year moratorium on state AI regulations for interstate commerce. This was the one that kind of set her off, because I think the state of Georgia was contemplating AI regulations, and clearly there's probably states like California, Colorado, Washington, who are presumably have the same issues. I have this returning it both in a bullet format with this sort of like alluding to restrictions or regulations, this alluding to definitions, including like the National AI Initiative Act. If there's any dollars appropriated as part of the bill, other details like this. So they also had these reporting requirements for effectiveness, which is interesting. And then for those who don't really want the bullet format and would prefer prose, there's a longer form prose version. And then I think this is critical that you include citations in this particular one. So I built out this citation section too. These are the inputs that it used from the bill. So, maybe the titles could be improved here, but within HR1 bill, this is indicating it's a 85% match rate. That's a bug, by the way. It shouldn't be showing the question mark. It should say match rate or relevancy match rate. So it's returning for each one of these. So, for example, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce during the 10-year period, beginning the date of. So this is the 10-year moratorium that we indicated up top. Let's go ahead and take another example. So who is eligible for tip tax exemption? Let's see how it does with the sort of weird language I have there. So queuing up the next one. By the way, there is an option to clear the chat. I just don't tend to ever use those features. So it looks like it's allowed for qualified tips during this year. The definition of qualified includes cash tips and certain occupancies. That continues along. They have to have social security number, which obviously debates around immigrants in the United States and those who do and don't have social security numbers is definitely at play here. So it's called the no tax on tips. This is a section within the bill, which is why it got extracted so cleanly. I think if there's a title, the model is returning it and trying to include it there. What I'm interested in, though, is it actually said for qualified tips, or rather include for certain occupancies. I want to see if what occupancies are available or eligible rather for this tip tax exemption. Let's see if it goes one step further here and see how well the citation does. By the way, this is not using Claude, so it's not using the citations model. So it looks like traditionally receiving tip food service workers. So I think what they're trying to do, barbers, hairdressers, they're trying to make sure that folks don't opt to say, I'll waive my entire salary and I'll take tips only, so they can exempt themselves from all tips. But you can be sure that people are going to be aiming for some tax loopholes. And that is probably why they created this. The Secretary of Treasury created this, or will create. Interesting. So they will publish a list of eligible occupations, which seems to suggest that it doesn't exist just yet, or rather they may have an initial one. So here's the relevance of the occupations. I'm wondering if we probably drill in this a bit further. So anyways, I wanted to sort of enable folks to, query the bill themselves and ask questions what's included in it, since it was passed and is now being discussed by Senate, and assuming there's no major issues despite sort of Elon's protestations or protests, whether it makes it through or not. And even if it does make it through Senate, there's still going to be reconciliation between the two houses of Congress. This is critical stuff. Wanted to mention the next step of this that I'm working on is going to include somewhere around this area, sort of compare senators' positions to the body of the bill. So I currently have a long-running agent task going on right now that's fetching all 100 senators, party affiliations, whether they're up for re-election in the midterms in 2026, their domestic policy positions, their international policy positions, the strong positions that they hold within. And then we're going to compare that against what's in the bill and see if there's things that would sort of be misaligned with their preferences or those that would be aligned with their preferences. And you as sort of voter can go out, reach out and say, hey, pretty sure you Patty Murray or you, Mark, I was going to say Marco Rubio, former senator, whatever. You get the point. So any given senator, there should be an opportunity, John Thune, we'll pick him as your Republican, to say, hey, this kind of runs contrary to what you've indicated in your policy, either in spoken policy positions, on your Senate.gov website, in your voting record. And ideally, we'll be returning some of that information as well. Again, this is me as one-man act, having never done a chat app before, but being familiar with sort of RAG and semantic search, which gets us to technology. So you can see through some of the open tabs here, we got some stuff going on. So for one, it is being deployed through Vercel. We got a bunch of healthy deployments going on here. Two, it is using both OpenAI and Groq. So I ended up asking, I wonder if it's still sitting. I know it's in Twitter, so we'll switch over there real quick because I'd posted a message at Sunny about it at Groq. So shoot here. So anyways, this was what I'm alluding to here. So kind of the what is vibe coding and where do you start moving beyond it? Because I was starting to think about all sorts of optimizations. So I ended up asking the model. I had some ideas in mind, like what about switching to a higher or faster inference, lower latency inference specific sort of platform, which Groq with a Q as opposed to Groq with a K of XAI and Twitter. Groq has what are called LPUs, they're specific chip type, and when you run on them, they're optimized for inference as opposed to training models, so they are really freaking fast. And it said, hey, the number one way to get an improvement in performance would be leveraging Groq with a Q. And so it said, hey, with Groq, you would be having a sort of 1 to 3 second response time specifically on the inference layer that doesn't include, there's multiple things at play. There's like a Redis cache involved. There's the initial semantic search you have to do against Pinecone, which are optimizations there is available as well. But I started doing this Groq, and then inside my environment variables, which I think I can get over there real quick, I decided to put in this flag that is I prefer Groq, and I can show you guys this. True. So what happens here is it'll make calls to Groq, and if I run out of budget or if Groq is unavailable, I put a model fallback that it switches to GPT-4o. I was having all sorts of issues with O3 today for some reason, so I just decided to pick an arbitrary other OpenAI model that was working for me. So I have that involved. We got Pinecone in here. I think I have it sitting open on one of these. There we go. You can see there's an index here. You can see the chunking that's going on. I ended up using OpenAI's tool. I think I put together myself like, hey, let's go do a quick script for this. And what's the technology selection? And I was pretty sure I wanted to comment specifically the embeddings. Yeah, we're using the text embedding ADA 02 for these vectors. The other thing I was going to say is, and is chunking them in, I asked it if it should do sentence and cross-sentence chunking. It optimized and instead just said like multi-sentence chunking, which I'm assuming does a decent job at keeping context when it's making its semantic search query. But if you go back to that piece that I had shared here and it was breaking down things you could do, by the way, this is before and after. It actually did run it. So initially, its estimates were that it would get you this. And then when we ran it, that turned out to be true. It was 3.7 seconds. So not exactly within this range, but definitely faster than 6 to 9 seconds. And latency matters in sort of customer experience. I had also talked about whether we should modify how embeddings are generated and then the search type. So the next sort of thing I was contemplating doing was an enhanced metadata. So grabbing as loading the embedding chunks or chunk embeddings into the Pinecone database, first run it against inference and do topic extraction or tag extraction. So what are the sort of key things that really matter within that section as opposed to just the raw full set of tokens in the embedding? which would allow for doing this combined search. So you're leveraging both the metadata as well as the embedding itself and searching within both contexts. Sometimes you do that metadata and it can do a keyword against the metadata. It makes it super fast. And then you're able to fetch the token back to do the comparison against, or not the token, but the embedding. Last in the network latency, that one's some work to be done. I think I put something about Redis caching so that if someone asks for the same question, I don't have to fetch it again. This is a static data set after all. So yeah, website, we've got Vercel for deployment. It's a Next.js app. Pinecone, and OpenAI, Groq, and then OpenAI. Maybe I should switch back to my little cheat sheet for myself here. We talked about adding the enhanced metadata, adding the data sources in order to sort of compare against where senators are at. So I'm going to be working on that tomorrow, but this thing is live. And, I always like to buy domains, and, it does have the BBB. So I did ob3chat, or ob3.chat. This is published, and I'll leave it in the details in the video. Again, this is Apes information knowledge. This is all part of the Apes on Keys collective. So generating all of this is part of this fun little project for, fashion and art. And we got, this is one of the things, the Apes on Knowledge. We got like podcasts that we're generating with agents. By all means, feel free to go steal any of the repos that we got going on here. I think the one that's most forked at this point is actually the Key to Sleep one itself. Starred. And then we have this Run Humans Run game that folks got a kick out of. Anyway, so I'm continuing on these projects, and the particular goal with this one was doing RAG and semantic search in order to facilitate chat. It did require embedding in Pinecone because, as example, if we were to use like the Claude context windows, it was 367% of what would have been allowed, right? So maybe you could have done a large context model windows, but I think you probably would have had the missing middle problem, things like that. So instead went the semantic search with RAG. And by the way, not an engineer. All of this was completely vibe coded. UI, honestly, ironically, as someone who's in sort of product and has managed UX, you think this would be prettier, but I was more interested in what I was getting back from the model than the presentation, though I do always have fun generating these images. So anyways, feel free, ob3.chat, go look, ask questions, and feel free to contact your relevant senators and Congress members. And I'll be adding that Senate piece here sometime soon. All right, have a good one.